Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner, and I'm very pleased to be joined by the mighty Tom Brevoort of Marvel Comics. How are you, Tom?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back.
It's always great to have you back. And as we're recording this, New York is going through some particularly apocalyptic times with that insane zero quality air outside, and thanks to our friends in Canada and their wildfire situation. But the pictures I've seen this week from some of our mutual friends out there in NYC have just been amazing.
Yeah, it's not fun to walk around in.
Yeah.
Everything is orange and hazy. There's so much dust and soot and whatever particulars in the atmosphere, and it's not great to breathe. It smells like you're right out by a roaring campfire or something. So.
Yeah.
Anybody that has any sort of respiratory condition is having a hard time these past few days. And I can only assume that the further north you go, the worse it gets. So in Canada, I don't understand how they're breathing at all.
Yeah, I mean it's something else. These big totemic, nature-driven events are really quite something to behold. I remember about, gosh, maybe it's about 10, 15 years ago. I was driving down the West Coast from LA to San Diego, and it was when they were having some of those West Coast wildfires. And I drove through a pretty similar kind of hellscape scenario, and I'd foolishly rented a convertible, yeah, which I ended up not using at all because I had to keep the top up the entire time. But it's really, really bizarre to. I mean, it makes for great photographs, though. That is the very slim upside.
Yes. For anybody who wondered what it was like to live inside a Zack Snyder movie,
yeah,
this is everything has got an orange haze over it. So.
Hey, it's funny, mate, because you know what? That's a very well made point. Do you know what? I suspect you will have seen the film I'm about to reference. Do you know what I think actually the most orange film of all time is? It's The Legend of the Lone Ranger. If you remember that from the early 80s. It looks like the whole thing. I mean, it's an amazing. I mean, it was, as I remember, it was directed by an amazing cinematographer. But the whole thing, I think it was William Fraker, if I remember correctly. The whole thing looks like it's like shot through brown Windsor soup. It's really quite incredible.
Yes. That's a memorable film for a bunch of reasons. None of them great.
No, all of them bad. Yes, absolutely right.
All of them pretty mediocre. But
yeah, I would say the one standout moment in that movie is probably Michael Horse playing Tonto, he's probably the best thing in it, and then went on to be a great part of Twin Peaks, of course, in later life.
Sure. Yeah, I prefer him in Twin Peaks, but
yeah, but so do I.
Yes,
so do I. Yeah. Well, we can all be blessed by the fact that Clinton Spilsbury never went on to have a career of any kind, And
although it's not like I don't feel bad for him.
I certainly do. I certainly do.
There were just some choices made on that picture, and people make choices with the best of intentions, but sometimes they just don't. They don't come together the way you thought they were gonna.
That mate, that is so absolutely true. So let's pivot into having a conversation about good choices, namely the choices.
Hopefully, good choices. Yeah.
Namely the choices you're making on your Marvel books. So as we have this conversation, and this conversation will be probably going up within a week of us talking now. So you're pretty much halfway through the calendar year. I know, as does everybody who works in the comics business, that you work way ahead of yourselves. But it's been a very interesting year thus far for Marvel, and an interesting year for your portfolio of books. So can you tell me what's in store for your Avengers titles over the next half of 2023, Tom?
I can tell a little bit, certainly.
As much as you can.
Right. We just launched the new creative iteration of Avengers with Jed MacKay and C.F. Villa. I think as we speak about this now, the second issue is about to drop. So, by the time it airs, people will probably have gotten a look at it. But the first one is definitely out. And so, it's kind of a, once again, as happens every time a creative team, tends to change on the Avengers title, it's a reframing and a refocusing on the Avengers, a reinterpretation of how we approach them, a slight shuffling of the cast, although it's a very, quintessential Avengers roster, and a bunch of big, crazy threats. Jed has just a bundle of ideas for new adversaries and opponents for the Avengers coming up. There's a series of tribulation events, each of which promises to be cataclysmic and earth-shaking. There's the running mystery of the missing moment that Kang was seeking, and what's going on with Kang and his rival Myrden and the Twilight Court. And so it's a good place to sort of stop in and jump on if you've not been taking a look at Avengers the last couple of years.
Nice one, excellent.
And then coming up in just a few weeks, maybe at this point, I guess it's just a few weeks. It's time is weird in my world when we talk about these things, but coming out of the Hellfire Gala and the Fall of X, and we gave a little taste of it in the Free Comic Book Day release. Will be the new version of Uncanny Avengers that Jerry Duggan and Javier Garrón are doing, and that's a book. I
think that looks amazing, by the way, mate. It looks great.
Javier Garrón has really, he was doing superlative work on Avengers with Jason Aaron, and he's continued to grow by leaps and bounds. So his work on this is truly special, and as a book, it's one of those titles, like, there's always sort of a fake division in the Marvel universe where people think of books as families, and these are X books and they're kind of here, and these are Avengers books and they're there, and whatever, the Spider-Man books are there. And Uncanny Avengers is one of those titles that we're doing to kind of break down those barriers a little more and show that no, all of that stuff is in a self-contained Marvel universe, and it all has connections or impacts on other titles. So Uncanny Avengers in particular, because it mixes a roster together out of some recognizable X mutants, and more standard Avengers sort of heroes, and it is set right in the aftermath of the events of the Hellfire Gala, is one of those things. There'll be stuff that's coming up in Spider-Man that will impact on the world of the X-Men and the world of the Avengers, and there'll be stuff in Daredevil or Hulk or whatever. So we're making a quasi concerted effort to re-underline the fact that the Marvel universe is all kind of one place, and not a bunch of different little city states that sometimes bump into one another.
I think that's very wise. Where does the can you give me a flavor of where the storyline for Uncanny Avengers jumps off? What's actually happening in the first issue without any spoilers?
We saw in the Free Comic Book Day that there's somebody new, some new as yet unidentified entity who has taken up the costume and persona of Captain Krakoa, the fictional mutant superhero that Cyclops adopted after he was killed and had to keep his resurrection a secret. And Captain Krakoa is out there ostensibly fighting for mutant freedom and equality by effectively being a bit of a terrorist. He launches an attack on Washington, D.C. that we see in the Free Comic Book Day. And so the Uncanny Avengers are very specifically going to be trying to bring him to ground, figure out who he is and what his true agenda is, and stop him from blowing anything else up. Within that, there'll be soap opera and shenanigans. It'll touch on, again, I can't say too much because Hellfire Gala hasn't happened yet. But it'll touch on things that grow out of that Hellfire Gala book, and that send all of the various X titles and a few other books into Fall of X. And so it'll be a big Avengers brouhaha.
Excellent. The only kind, mate. And any other Avengers books that we need to know about?
Coming up slightly after that, in, I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm going to say September, is Avengers Incorporated, Avengers Inc., which is Al Ewing and Leonard Kirk, and it's a very deliberately different Avengers title for us. And I can say this to you, and you will get it, and your audience most likely will get this completely. Whereas when I say this locally, it takes a little while for me to have to explain what it is. But it's the core concept, when you strip everything away from it, is what if the Avengers were the Avengers? So it's
brilliant. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So it's Janet Van Dyne and a new character, Victor Shade, backed up by a bowler wearing Jarvis, operating out of the Jarvis Lounge and getting involved in weird mysteries and secrets of the Marvel Universe and strange cases, surrounded by and aggregating to them on an as needed basis other Avengers and other characters in the Marvel Universe. So we see the Vision early on, we get Valkyrie, Luke Cage is in the first issue, but it's much more about uncovering mysteries and secrets and having a certain quasi-noir sort of flavor to it. So it's a very different thing than what you tend to think of as a core Avengers title. But it is, fairly well threaded into our plans. It has touch points between what Al is doing and what Jed is doing on the main series. And, so it should be a very distinct Avengers release.
Yeah, I mean, it will not surprise you to hear, Tom, for very obvious visual cue reasons, how excited I am by that concept. And that is wonderful. I have to say, I was talking to Al a while ago, and he was saying, wow, this is a thing I really want to talk. I'm not sure if I can tell you about it yet,
Yeah.
And I was like, what on earth's that? This is clearly what it was, because he was like, yeah, you would love this. But I better wait till we talk again. And that's so right up my street. And right up the street of, to somehow bridge that gap between Marvel Avengers and Steed and Peel, that is a beautiful space to operate in as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's definitely channeling some of the style aesthetic of the Steed and Peel Avengers. It's not literally that, but it's sort of figuratively that. It takes some inspiration from that sort of approach of elegance and cool and style.
Oh, mate, and I couldn't think of a better writer to be on that book than Al Ewing.
It was entirely Al's idea. This was his pitch,
sure.
Top to bottom. So
yeah,
it wouldn't exist without him. And it should, like I say, definitely be a unique thing.
Oh, mate, I just can't wait. Now I'm truly excited about that. All your plans sound great, as they always do. Is there anything else within the Avengers wheelhouse for us to talk about?
I don't think. Not within the core Avengers titles. There's plenty to talk about if you start to get into the solo character book.
And we will in a second. The reason I was making that bridge is something else I wanted to talk about. Is something you and I collaborated on last year, which is now available, which is the series of 3 Titan books, Marvel script to page books. Yeah,
right.
And basically here is the Avengers script to page. Yeah, which is this is one of a series of 3. And Avengers script to page. There is also Black Panther script to page, and there's also Spider-Man script to page. And if I recall correctly, Tom, you actually, what this is it's about 5 to 6 scripts per book. Yeah.
Yes.
And broken down as examples for the aspiring writer or the super interested fan, and then broken down with some commentary with writers and editors around those scripts. So the Black Panther scripts are kind of bookended by myself talking with Angelique Roche, and then the Spider-Man books are bookended by myself talking to Dan and talking to Nick Lowe, and the Avengers book is all bookended with these kind of DVD extras, if you will, is myself talking with yourself. There we go.
Right.
You know, so it's basically Tom's insight into the range of scripts in this book. Scripts by Al Ewing, by Jonathan Hickman, by Mark Miller, and by Mark Waid. And actually, it's turned out to be, we've had loads of great feedback about this book, mate. It's turned out to be such a great selection. But I think the response to your analysis of what people are about to read in those scripts has been particularly well received.
Well, you know, that's always nice to hear. I haven't had a chance to actually see a copy of the book yet, so it's difficult. It's an abstract thing to me that we talked about, and I wrote whatever I wrote months ago. So,
well, mate, I guarantee that if you haven't got it already, it is definitely on the way. Because before we did this conversation, I spoke to my editorial guys. You've really got to get it out the building, get it over to him. So if you've not got it already, it's definitely en route.
Well, thank you.
So thanks for doing that, mate. That was a fun project to work on, but I would recommend it to anybody who's interested in the inner workings of the comics business and how we assemble a comic book. I think you'll find that and Tom's all-seeing eye oversight of that process to be very interesting. And Tom, so in terms of what's happening with some of the individual parts of the Avengers over the course of 23, can we have a little chat about that?
Sure. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with Captain America.
Well, we just announced obviously the current iterations of Captain America, the two titles, Sentinel of Liberty and Symbol of Truth, are both going to draw to a close as their stories wrap up. In both the big Captain America 750. Yeah. And then the Captain America finale that comes immediately thereafter. And the Cap 750 includes not just contributions from the current creative teams of both of those titles, but also a number of shorter pieces by Cap creators past and present. So there's a nice range of material in that. And then after that, we just announced, I think the announcement only went out like a day or so ago, that a new run of Captain America will be beginning, and it will be written by J. Michael Straczynski and illustrated by Punisher artist Jesus Saiz.
Wonderful.
So that's coming up in the immediate future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited about that. Something you and I have talked about in the past is that literally my favorite comic book character is Captain America. And even though I'm a card-carrying, Englishman from the north of England, the genesis of that is my grandfather, which you may recall, fought with an American unit in World War II, and that's how he fell in love with comic books, specifically with Captain America and Superman and Batman, and the Torch, but mainly Captain America. And he was a huge Captain America aficionado his entire life. And so the World War II origins of it all never left him, and so I think it strikes me that like getting JMS on the book, he's a great choice, a very interesting choice, but also the 750th issue. And as we're talking about this, some of the covers for that, the variant covers will be rolling through the screen here. That just looks like a great package to me. I just can't wait to read it.
Well, thank you. Alana Smith, who's editing that series, really went all out. Not just on that 750, but on all of these, books in this transition period. So making sure that Sentinel and Symbol, wrap up well, and that those creators have a chance to bring their stories to a strong climax. And that the jump off point for Joe and for Jesus is good, and then that Cap 750 is an appropriate anniversary issue that just has a bevy of different stories that touch on Cap's world and legacy and history in different ways.
Yeah, I can't wait, mate. And like so much of what we're talking about, the books that Tom and I are discussing can be pre-ordered unless it's way out in front, like the JMS. Can be ordered from the links attached to our conversation. $7.50 for sure will be available, and you'll, as we're talking, as I've said, you've seen a bunch of covers. How about lurching into the world of Iron Man? What's happening over there?
Iron Man is another book like Uncanny Avengers that's going to be heavily impacted by the events of the Hellfire Gala and Fall of X, and part of that is that Jerry Duggan is writing it, and Jerry obviously is also writing X-Men and is very steeped in that world, and so we've sort of seen that connection point grow over the past couple of months as Tony's company Stark Unlimited was bought up by Fei Long, who's one of the characters involved with the Orcus, and that they've started churning out Stark Sentinels using Iron Man technology to hunt down mutants and do other nefarious things. And so there's a whole army of giant killer mutant hunting robots that have Iron Man's face that are out there running around and hunting down mutants. And so all of this is is a very personal situation for Tony Stark. He's kind of been hit a few different ways in a relatively personal manner, and where he ends up, how he's connected on the board of all of the post Hellfire Gala things, where all the pieces end up after the aftermath of that. That's going to be fairly central to things going forward. He'll have an interesting new romance going forward, and he'll be in definitely a fulcrum position as the events in the mutant part of the world play out over the course of the next year. Again, initially it was maybe hard to see, but as issue after issue has come out, I think it's clearly more obvious that the stuff that Iron Man is dealing with in that book is directly connected to all of the stuff that the X-Men are dealing with. They're going to be dealing with in a very significant way.
I mean, I think it's so interesting to have like Tony Stark interacting with that part of the Marvel universe, and I guess it speaks to again that kind of like that interaction and like crossing those bridges between what might have been traditionally considered to be different pockets of the universe to show it all as one holistic cohesive whole. I think is a very interesting and sensible thing to do.
Yeah, and hopefully what it means is people that are interested in what's going on with the X-Men will look at Iron Man. People that are interested in what's going on with Iron Man will look at the X books, and so you kind of get a sense of the bigger picture that's being laid out in all of these different places.
Yeah, no, right on, and it looks to me like there's some great plans for Thor in the offing this year also.
Obviously, we've talked about that we've announced that Al Ewing and Martin Piccolo are going to be doing Immortal Thor with excellent covers by Alex Ross. I know what's going on in that book, but I don't know how much we've said yet publicly. So I'm going to tread very carefully as we get into things here. But it's definitely going to be Al trying to bring the same kind of, not the approach he took on Hulk, but the same sort of analytics and peeling away and getting to the heart of what the series is about that he did with Hulk, but with Thor and with the mythology of Asgard and the Asgardians and the larger cosmology that exists behind them. So it'll be another sort of expansive thing. Al doesn't tend to do things on a small level, but again, like with Immortal Hulk, excuse me, it'll start from a nice small point and grow tree-like as you move forward, and he gets deeper and deeper into the richness of the story, and exploring all the different facets of the character. He does something early on. He and the creative team and Will Moss, they do something early on with Thor's hammer that's on the surface of it is a super obvious thing to do, but that nobody has thought to do with it yet in 60 years. And so I love it whenever somebody comes up with something like that. And you suddenly go, whoa, that was sitting there the whole time, and nobody ever thought to do, to actualize it that way. So there's stuff coming up that's very impactful and very clever, and that speaks to the heart of the characters.
Mate, and coming from you, that's high praise indeed. I mean, as you know, I'm a fellow admirer of and adherent to Al's cosmological approach to Marvel superheroes, but also just the intellectual rigor he applies to Marvel history and the level of research for a man who's younger than you or younger than me. And I don't mean anything by that apart from the fact that he's had less years to actually read this stuff. Yeah, I'm pretty much the same age as the Marvel universe. And I've been reading the book since I was 3, but when I have chats with him, so I spoke to Al recently for this show, and we were supposed to be talking about what was happening in Venom, and what was happening in X-Men Red, and we did indeed talk about that. But at the beginning of the interview, I complimented on one of my favorite Marvel books this year has been Fury, the Fury one shot that he did. Now, right. I'm a huge Nick Fury lover in all his incarnations, right? Kind of soldier, super spy, contemporary, Sam Jackson style Fury, Fury Jr. I love all of it. And I was just telling him how much that really got me, the whole book. That opened up a door on a 40-minute conversation about Nick Fury where we went all around the character's history that burned through the entire interview, and we literally ended up talking about Venom and X-Men Red for 5 minutes at the end. Oh, by the way, and these are the latest issues of this, and you get them from the links to the video. But I thought what he did with that book was great. I just really loved it.
Well, thank you very much. Again, I thought he did a terrific job. I thought all the artists that he worked with, Adam, Tom, and Scott and Ramon, also did a nice job of capturing the different eras, the different periods.
Yes.
Al is just very, like you say, he's very well read, and he does his research and his homework as he deep dives into these things. And he likes to play with these sort of obscure bits of his history in the stories he tells, and he does so very, very, very nicely. He's one of the go-to guys that I would turn to when I had something like a Fury anniversary book, because I know he'd be able to get and encapsulate the whole of the character's history. His recent series that he did with Alana for both Ant-Man and then the Wasp, same kind of thing, where he spanned all the various eras and touched on all these different aspects of the characters and their time in comics, and yet made it a new story that you could just sit down and read and not necessarily need to come in knowing all of that history ahead of time.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I love those books also for exactly the same reasons. I also love the kind of like pop art style cover series as well. I thought that was great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was really very clever. And Tom, is there anything? Are there any of the other constituent parts of the Avengers universe in their own books that you can tell me about?
Well, there's always stuff going on in places, in other books. I will say the new iteration of Black Panther, the Eve Ewing and Chris Allen Black Panther, is really good. I've read the first 2 at this point. That's another book that Will Moss is editing. Yeah. I've read the first 2. It's a very different take on the traditional Black Panther. It picks up right where John Ridley left him off. We get a little taste of that in Avengers, but not in the same way. We get to see a completely new city in Wakanda that we've never been to before, and see what it's like when you get away from sort of the center of government and into these more outerling regions. And the city is very much a character in this story. And Eve introduces a raft of characters for T'Challa to interact with, new enemies, new friends, and a real deep dive into that world. And Chris visualizes it all so wonderfully. Like, it really is great, top to bottom.
That's fantastic.
And then Captain Marvel, Kelly Thompson just wrapped up her 50-issue run. And we're moving into a limited series that Annie Nocenti is writing, and then there'll be some other Captain Marvel news further out. So that's all good. Scarlet Witch continues to be a lovely little series. It had a little jump there where we skipped a month to do the annual.
Yeah.
But that's continuing apace with Steve Orlando and Sarah Pichelli and a little bit of Russell Dowderman and a few other folks. Really,
Sarah Pichelli's great, I think. Really.
Oh, definitely, and I think she's also well suited for that book. Both in terms of it being a single character title, where I think she tends to excel, rather than team book or group situations that just have more moving parts. She's better able to invest in a small contained number of characters, and the fact that it's a series with a certain amount of mysticism and fantasy in it, and she's very good at depicting all of those things. So that's a lovely title. Pretty much, all of the various core constituency Avengers have things going on in their worlds.
Yeah, right on. And in terms of other special projects coming up, there are a couple that we talked about off camera. Can you talk a bit about those, Tom?
Well, yeah, I can start with one that I didn't mention before, but I should have, which is in August. We have Marvel Age 1000, which is this year's big Marvel birthday book. That a bunch of years ago for the 60th, we did Marvel Comics 1000, and I think it was last year, might have been the year before, we did Amazing Fantasy 1000. Dick Lowe put together. And so this year we're doing Marvel Age 1000, and it's the same sort of thing, only different. It is again a celebration of the essence of Marvel, with different stories from a wide variety of contributors, past and present. They're not one-page stories like they were in Marvel Comics 1000. They are more substantial, stories between like 6 and 14 pages, that touch on sort of what people's thoughts were when the question was put to them. Do a story that captures the quintessential essence of Marvel. So it features all of the face characters that you would know, with a particular emphasis, although not an exclusive emphasis, on the 60s characters.
Yeah, right.
It's got another murderer's row of creators involved, and I've been just it goes to print next week, so I've had my hands in the engine of it this week a little bit, working on the various stories, and it's really coming together nicely.
Oh, lovely. I mean, as you know, that's right up my street big time. So, that's something that's a particular focus of mine that I'm looking forward to. Anything that, delves into Marvel history and also takes you to a degree behind the scenes, or touches upon that. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's really good in that when you do an anthology like this, sometimes it's a little bit of a crapshoot. Like, you don't quite know what you're going to get, and one story is always the weak story.
Yeah,
you can't avoid it. Something's gotta be the lowest thing on the bar. But at this point, I feel like everything in that book is A material. Like, I can't point to one and say Yeah, that's the one that's a little less than the others. They're all really good pieces. So people really came through strongly with what they were doing.
I just, mate, I just can't wait. I can't wait. That's great to hear. I know I feel excited just hearing about it. How about other projects the second half of the year, Tom?
I now have to remember all the things that we talked about.
So I think maybe Gods is like it's yet to be discussed.
Yes, yes, slightly further down. Although people are going to start getting a taste for it, not only in the Hellfire Gala, but in a number of Marvel titles coming up over the course of the next couple of months. We're going to be seeding some of the characters and some of the backstory and stuff of Gods in about, I think it's about 8 or 9 different titles. So there'll be little sequences. These will all be part of the stories in those books. But you'll be reading a Fantastic Four story, and something will be there, and there'll be a little God's bug to kind of tell you that this is all actually a part of what John Hickman is building in Gods. And what Gods is it's Jonathan and Valerio Schiti sort of reimagining and relaying out the table of Marvel's mystic cosmic cosmology in a very intelligent and yet very down to earth sort of a way. It's a very Jonathan Hickman book. So it's quirky and it's fun and it's different. There really is nothing else that we're publishing that's quite like it. And I know I'm sticking my head in a noose every time I say this, but it's really the only way I can describe it to people. The closest analogy I can give is it's sort of like a cross between Sandman and Saga, but in the Marvel Universe.
Well, I mean, I can't think of a more evocative description than that, mate. Do you know what I mean? That's like,
and I know that puts the bar way up here, but it's Hickman and it's Schiti, and they're not really shooting for any less than that. And it reimagines that side, that aspect of the Marvel Universe in a manner that is analogous to Sandman, but it focuses in particular on a couple of key character relationships in the manner that Saga does.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that's the verbal equivalent of being in a Chuck Jones cartoon and slamming down the TNT handle on the box.
Yes. Yes.
So I think the gauntlet has firmly been thrown. A Galactus-sized gauntlet has been thrown down there, Tom.
Yeah, and like I say, I know it's those are big words and those are big promises to make. But hopefully, when people get to see and experience that first issue, and that first issue is massive. It's like 3 times the normal size. It's an oversized. It's a phone book of an issue, because Jonathan there was so much ground to cover and so many things that we had to do to set all this stuff up that that can be daunting for people. And so I have to fall back on. If you like the things that John has done before, whether that's House of X and Powers of 10, or Secret Wars, or his Avengers and New Avengers run, or Fantastic Four, Secret Warriors, whatever.
Secret Warriors was a great book, I thought. Yeah, I love that.
Thank you. He's bringing the same level of universe building and big ideas and craft. Or if you just like his own creator-owned works, whether it's East of West or Black Monday Murders or whatever, like it really is a title that is so completely in his wheelhouse that it's fairly undiluted. It's got that in common with his Shield, when he did Shield with Dustin Weaver.
Yeah, that was great.
Except in a slightly different area. Shield was historical, and this is cosmos, mythological, mystic.
I mean, to me, that sounds amazing. I think one of the things that you guys, as an editorial team, have put together very nicely over the last decade is within your writing talent relationships. I think when you think about how smart and gifted, yet also in love with the material, creators like Hickman are, like Kieran and Al, like Torrin Grumbeck. You know, it's just they're such Derek Landy. They're such unique talents, but they truly love Marvel at the same time. You know, and so they have these wild imaginations, and they're coming at it with a sense of awe and excitement, I think. And certainly, I've spoken to a lot of those guys, as you know, and whenever you talk to them, they're genuinely excited about the work. You know, that they have trouble reining themselves in. You know, they want to talk about it.
Yes, yeah, definitely, and that energy and that enthusiasm hopefully comes across to the audience, and gets them excited and gets them invested in what's going on in the Marvel world.
No, it's so true, Tom. Now we're on, since we've hit upon the terms energy and enthusiasm. Where I'd like to close out, as I've done in the past, is to just give some time to the other facet of you as a comics professional, which is your best in class status as a comics historian. And for anybody who is not familiar with what I'm about to say, what I wholeheartedly recommend, and my favorite slice of regular comics history, is a number of things, all created by you, Tom. So I would urge that anybody checks out your website, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is the Tom Brevoort Experience, right?
Yeah, you can just, it's like tombrevoort.com is the address.
Tombrevoort.com. So
if you can spell my name, which most can't, it's not hard to to get to.
The double O is the key, right, mate? You know.
Yes, the double O is the key, and it is the thing that fouls people up. People do double E all the time.
And it's if you've got any interest at all in comics history, such a brilliant romp. But by the same token, something I always look forward to is your Man with the Hat newsletter, and particularly, I mean, what I'm amazed by about that, and what I don't fully understand, I have to say, bearing in mind that I've been a journalist and an editor for 35 years, I do not understand how you managed to write that newsletter and do your job at the same time, knowing how busy you are. How the fuck you get so many words onto the page in that newsletter while doing your job? That is amazing to me, mate.
Well, that all gets written. I mean, the thing that's truly scary about it is, other than the setup, that all gets written after the workday is done. That all gets written between Friday, evening, and usually, Saturday evening. Quite often it's quite regular that I end up sitting down at some point between 9 and 10 on Saturday night and just going until it's finished. 3 hours later. So that just happens because I'm disciplined enough to sit down and do it. But it's not an approach I'd recommend to anybody.
No, I wouldn't recommend it for myself, but I think it's super admirable, and we're the beneficiaries. Comics fans are the beneficiaries of it, because anybody who's not familiar with this, and what I would thoroughly recommend you tune in and subscribe is Tom's thing is to poke around within the vast comics landscape, the history of comics, and come up with pieces of esoteric information or answer questions that people have asked. But there's also a tremendous amount of fan engagement where people ask you certain questions and you come back with your relatively no holds barred and informative responses. So I'll love that newsletter, mate. But I have to say, I also, and something that I must say I kind of often download and save quite a bit, is you've got this thing on your Facebook page, your personal Facebook page, where you're quite dedicated to reeling around posts from, say, 5-10 years ago, I guess, as the Facebook memories come up. But yeah, I think you, more than anybody else, has a spectacular command and use of just brilliant one-off comic book panels, right? and I have to confess, mate, my iPhone's right here, and in my photos on my iPhone, I don't save all of them, but I would say maybe at least once a month you put one up and like, man, I've got to put that on my Instagram at some point at the right moment, because they're all kind of pithy observations about elements of human nature as you can, cross cut them with comic book art. So I think I've got about 50 over the years. I've got about 50 of images that come from your Facebook page on my phone, and it's just wonderful stuff, mate. It's brilliant.
Well, thank you again. Like, I can hardly take all the credit for that, because most of those are just things that show up in my feed somewhere. Somebody somewhere posts some image, and I think that's a good standalone image, and I grab it and it goes in a folder, and I'll repost it to whatever, to Instagram or to Facebook or whatnot. And like you say, some of these are years old. They'll show up in my Facebook memories automatically, and I'll just recirculate them again. So it's a sort of ever growing repository of these oddball panels and non sequitur moments from across comics history that are fun to revisit and look at, either because they're insightful or because they're so loopy and ridiculous.
I mean, there are some, and the loopy and ridiculous is really interesting because, of course, the Silver Age, particularly the Silver Age comics that were put out by your distinguished competition, some of them are so batshit crazy, bat pun intended, and just some of the Superman stuff that's out there's just so loopy. I won't go into detail on it, but because people should experience this for themselves. There's a recent Superman cover you put up that I as soon as I saw it, I remembered everything about that issue straight away. And the story's absolutely nuts. Makes no sense whatsoever. And it was just so glorious to see it again, because it was there, hiding around in my cerebral cortex. And I hadn't thought about it, I think, since I read it, 30 years plus. But the minute I saw it, I was like, man, it is just so entertaining. Tom, how long have you been at Marvel for now?
I literally just passed, at the start of this week, was the 34th anniversary of my first day as an intern.
Yeah, wow.
So 34 years, or close to 34 years. I haven't actually been hired full time yet 34 years ago, but I was around as an intern and as a hanger on. By the end of the year, I would be hired. So it's between 33 and 34.
I mean, that's very heartening to hear, because your tenure at Marvel is pretty much, it's about 2 years shy of my entire media career, being a journalist, editor, publisher, what have you. Yeah. So I really, that time span is something I really understand. But I guess the compliment I would like to go out on, mate, is we were talking about energy, enthusiasm before with your stable of writers, but I can think of very few people who've been doing these kinds of jobs. And, as you can tell, I absolutely love comics, and I myself am an enthusiast and a positivist, but I can think of very few people who've been working at the coalface of these kind of professions, creative professions, for such a long period of time, who still have all the energy and enthusiasm they walk through the door with. But you're undoubtedly one of those people, because it radiates not just out of the work you do, but out of the stuff that you produce on your own time, the website, the newsletter, just the vast amount of information that is there that is fully embraced. I can't think of anybody who has the level of enthusiasm and energy that you do after 35 years of doing the job. It's just amazing to me, mate.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know that I have all the enthusiasm that I started with.
That's true. Well, you're very honest in your communications, which I think is very interesting.
Well, again, I try to be, although people don't always love that either. Sometimes you want to hear the thing you want to hear, as opposed to the actual reality of a given situation.
But trading in the pure unalloyed truth of things, that kind of makes what you do have to say, positive and negative, much more real, if you will, much more emotionally resonant.
I hope so. I hope you're right about that. It's often a little difficult to tell. There are days of the week when I'll write about some old, Marvel comic from the 60s, and literally have fans that are pro Stan Lee saying, "Oh, he's disparaging Stan and he's destroying Stan's memory," and fans who are pro Jack Kirby saying, "Oh, he's totally taking Stan's side and disparaging Jack Kirby." And so, I've literally, I'm like the one person who can piss everybody on all sides of these issues off at the same time with whatever I'm saying. So,
but that's when you know you're getting it right, mate. That's when you know you're getting it right. Offending everybody is a good place to be.
Hopefully so. But it's been enjoyable to do, and I'll do it as long as that's the case.
Well, Tom, long may it continue, brother. And as I've said to you before, it is always a pleasure having you on the show. And it's always a pleasure hearing you talk about your future, you and the team's future plans at Marvel. And I'll look forward to you joining us again in the future. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend, mate, amid all the Canadian smoke.
Well, thank you. It's a bit better today, so hopefully they're getting the fires under control, and it's not going to be a huge problem.
Fingers crossed, mate. And hopefully the peculiar weather that has situations, depressions and what have you, they've created that bowl, that dissipates as well, and then you'll be nice and clear in a couple of days. Yeah.
Again, you can tell the difference in the air quality this afternoon from yesterday immediately.
Yeah. Oh, well, that as a person who's always suffered with their breathing, I think that's a very good thing. And
definitely.
Thanks again for all your candor, Tom. It is very interesting to hear about it all. Everybody who's been watching this conversation, the books we are talking about, you can find from the links attached to this conversation, and all of Tom's comics history. You can find the links for that attached to this conversation also. And thanks so much, Tom. It's great to see you as always, mate.
Good to see you as well. I'm glad you're doing well.
Thank you very much, brother. Will you be at San Diego this year?
I will not be at San Diego. I don't think. We're sending other folks to San Diego, which, given with the size that what San Diego has become, that might be for the best.
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah, well, you don't need armies of Stan and Jack fans coming up to you going, I can't believe you said this, that, or the other. Titan Comics will be back this year. We've taken a few years off, fueled by the pandemic, so I'm looking forward to it. But it's not going to be that long time back in New York, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the flesh then, mate.
Great.
Yeah.
We'll see you then.
Yeah, you take care, Tom. Have a great weekend. All the very best.
Yeah, you too. All right.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.